So, willkommen. Schön, dich hier begrüßen zu dürfen in unserer Stimme des Himmels. I'm very glad this is an English class to able to greet you in the voice from heaven. And if you want to hear it, I can also say it in Spanish. But this is a welcoming of old friends, I would say, of brothers and old friends in that dedication that we are absolutely ready to remember who we are, and therefore we go at any lengths. And in that going to any lengths, we are willing to give everything for a change of mind. And this is really what we have dedicated our life, and we are continue to dedicating that process of transformation using this work from Out of Time, A Course in Miracles, and using a mind training prescription, a directive that is given us from Out of Time as it comes along in this second part of the lessons of the Workbook of A Course in Miracles, and in order to comprehend for ourselves that we are not really seeing here anything that we can categorize as something and leaving it or having it as part of the world. But it is really in that application a very clear recognition that opens up in our mind and shows us not just the meaninglessness of all the things, but really the nothingness of that thought system, and how that thought system that we call the ego thought system is presenting itself in order to sell a version of, hey, look, here's my real world, this is real. And, and we know this is completely ridiculous, because none of this is real in truth. And so to bring about our understanding of the awakening of our mind, and we can term that as this seeming process, as the title of this new series is 3 Days to Awakening, a seeming process of actions of mind indeed, which we can understand as the idea of 3 steps, 3 actions of mind, 3 thoughts, let's say, of self-recognition. And so we experience them in that application of a daily lesson of A Course in Miracles. And if I'm sharing with you lesson 9, which, by the way, I'm active already since the beginning and had already a session in Spanish about that. Or if I say, well, let's even extend it, we are coming already from 1.5 week mind training. So from lesson 1, and let's add on another week and say the first 15 lessons. The master teacher of A Course in Miracles would refer many, many times to the value of the first 15 lessons. And we have in the first 10 lessons definitely an emphasis of looking at what our thoughts are, and discovering literally the meaninglessness and nothingness, as we have already mentioned it before in those first lessons. If it is starting with nothing I see means anything, and continues into the acknowledgement that I have given what I see all the meaning that it has for me, as in lesson 2, and continuing and coming already to a first conclusion that I do not really have any capacity. I do not understand what I see. I have not the capacity in my mind to understand what is not understandable, to understand what is in reality meaningless. And that becomes then very reasonable to think and to have in the mind very clearly put, okay, these thoughts that I have about the world, about objects of the world, about seeing myself being reflected or projected in any way that I call objective reality, these thoughts do not mean anything. And the moment I still hold on a little bit of a meaning, I will be upset. And the following two lessons, 5 and 6, teach us that we are never upset for the reason that we think. And we are upset because we see something that is not there. And that is a complete quantum idea. But that idea, I see something that is not there, leads me directly into a full acknowledgement. Okay, then everything that I think I see and I call with some name or hold any meaning of it in my mind is really the past. And I have to acknowledge that I see only the past. I cannot really comprehend what the present moment is. And the ego will do everything to just to bridge as fast as possible those ideas and concepts, self-concept from the past and project it onto the future, so that it can conclude, well, that's all that you have, that's all that you are, and be happy with your past and be happy with a projected future that is unknown to you and you have no connection to it, but it will be the result of your past thinking. And so this present moment is always overlooked by the ego because it doesn't comprehend it. It doesn't know anything of the present moment. And this is exactly what this mind training of A Course in Miracles, particularly the first 50 lessons. And so within the first 50 lessons, these first 15 lessons show us that if we work our mind and acknowledge that what we see is meaningless and isn't really there, and that means it doesn't exist in reality, then I can also acknowledge that what I see and know is a seeing of the past is also not existent. The past doesn't exist. The past is over. That is all that we can say about the past. That it is over, that it is gone, and it has nothing to do. There is no link to the present memory. There is no link how we could say that it would have anything to do with me now. The past doesn't have anything to do with you now. And you can say, well, but I feel the pain of the past and I'm still suffering of what has happened to me or how I have been treated or attacked or threatened or whatever. Yeah. And it is still true that that memory that you're holding in your mind and choose to experience and try to experience in the present moment, but never truly experience in the present moment. That means you only relive a past pain again in the past. The moment you experience the past in the present moment, guess what's going to be happening? You're going to lose the word from all you thought how you made up your word. I lose the word from all I thought it is, that it is for me. So it disappears literally out of my mind. And once we acknowledge and are in an experience of the disappearing of an objective reality of the world as it is projected, as the world as it is perceived by the body's eyes, then it becomes really interesting because that is the beginning of the transformation of the mind. Because then, okay, now I'm free to choose. I have a power of mind that I use to choose and to take decisions all the time, every moment. And what are my decisions? It is, I'm free to either choose to experience myself and see and perceive the light or perceive darkness. And there isn't really anything in between. And we all take these decisions every moment. And only we make the decision for the light, for that is eternal, for that can be seen truly, for that we think with God, that is the only way that we find not just a way out of that perception, but really come to a self-recognition and to an experience of the peace of God within ourselves and realizing who we are. And so after that seventh lesson, I see only the past, and coming to the acknowledgement in lesson 8 that my mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. That is a deep acknowledgement of this tendency, of this habitual obsession of the mind to always look at the past, to always have the reference to the past. And it becomes a real addiction in the human being to have that relationship going on within one's own determination. Who am I right now? What are my capabilities and my functions here? And it's all in reference to the past. And then seeing, okay, this is the reason why I'm suffering, why I'm not happy, why I'm in pain, because my mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. And this need not be. And so, of course, it makes us aware that that's the reason why we don't really see anything. You know, it is not really a seeing of something, of an illusion that could be then called um, as a reality. No, this is then realized, okay, here are my illusions, and I'm holding them true, and I'm holding them as real. This is what I'm doing in my mind, and as that mind, as that human mind. And this is what I want to change now. So he makes us aware in lesson 8 very, very frankly and clearly that this mind doesn't understand anything, and this mind cannot really understand the present moment. And so it is thinking nothing. It is not thinking. We just have to learn and come about to think with God. And that is a new way of thinking. And that means to think as creative thought, creative mind. And of course, there is no time involved in that. It becomes something that we are. It has to become something completely consistent. And so it's also understood that this not thinking and thinking nothing is really a not seeing anything. So all that you see as a body in a body and projected as a word is seeing nothing. And now we coming to this lesson 9 and 10, in which we practice that I see nothing as it is now. And there's a clear emphasis made that there is resistance in the mind to practice that or to acknowledge that. The ego will offer you some resistance to it, unless your mind is already sufficiently trained and it has become a reasonable idea. If you say now the situation, you are with your computer and I see nothing as it is now. Those are actually two parts. I see nothing and as it is now, as it is here and now in this present moment. And seeing I see nothing, that nothingness is really acknowledging also, I could say, okay, I do understand now, I do recognize, I do see in my mind that this world doesn't exist, that there is no world. That's the nothingness that you're practicing in the utilization of those dream imageries which you apply with that lesson. And so what we learn and what we truly give a commitment of, because as I said, it's an every moment choice. And that commitment has to be a firm commitment. And that commitment is about what type of perception do I choose I want to experience myself. And he calls it in chapter 3 of the textbook of the Course in Miracles an innocent perception, or he calls it the reasonable, a true perception, right? And so the true perception is the choice to perceive light instead of the darkness. And of course, that I see nothing as it is now confirms me what is practiced then in lesson 10, that my thoughts are meaningless. If I really mean that I see nothing as it is now, then I'm perfectly confirmed that all my thoughts, all my private thoughts, all my human thoughts do not mean anything. And then again, it from lesson 11 on, and it goes even to lesson 16, the lessons will teach us what actually our mind, our thinking is producing, what it makes, what it projects. So that's why we immediately practice then, okay, my meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. That is what it produces, what it makes up. And from there we come then from that we acknowledge that meaninglessness, and seeing a meaningless world is really upsetting. I'm upset because I see a meaningless world, and that's not really so different than to say a meaningless word engenders fear, because an upset is just part of fear in opposition to love without opposite. And then we come to the lesson 14 that clarifies the causation of the dream and holds our source completely free of that making, of that illusionary, hallucinatory making, by teaching us, by our possibility to learn that God did not create a meaningless world, and therefore it is not real. And the world we see has nothing to do with reality. We acknowledge that it is of our own making and does not exist. And so from that lesson follows that my thoughts are images that I have made. Here is a declaration of taking responsibility about the dream in which I believe as a human being I'm in, or I'm part of it, or I'm affected by it. And the moment, that's the hero of the dream in chapter 27, isn't it? The moment I acknowledge and I teach myself that my thoughts are images that I have made, then it becomes clear that those thoughts projected, that everything that I see as the world and inner world are my own fabrications, are my own thoughts. And now I can practice in an alternative, in a change of those ideas. And I can choose to see the light instead as what was reflecting back, as littleness, as an attack, as threat, as any form of ego mind. And then we arrive, okay, I also acknowledge I do not have neutral thoughts. There is no privacy in my thoughts. And everything, the world I see, it comes from the same era of thinking. So I'm just gonna wanted to outline what we are really looking here at in this idea of 3 days, because as I'm here reviewing with you those first 15 lessons in this second episode of the 3 days to awakening, it becomes clear, okay, I have here different actions of mind. I have seemingly here transformative steps that I take, and I'm willing to go along with that instruction. I'm willing to not stop until my mind is completely at peace and recognizes everything in the world, everyone, as one's own self. And that self that is eternal, that self that is creative, that self that is one with God. And I can just express here my gratitude for this guidance, for this companionship that is given us by Jesus Christ. And so by every brother within our own mind who holds up that truth and the light and shares with us always to only acknowledge the truth. And especially in times in which the controversy is so strong, as you see it with COVID, vaccination, and then especially here in the USA, now the denial or the battle about the elections and the denial of the acknowledgement of the new president. And it's all kinds of controversies and controversial ideas are presented, conspiracies are flying around in everywhere. And we are here to be very clear and to be very firm also, to not accept any illusionary outcome, to not accept anything that is just conceptually challenging an objective reality. We are here to acknowledge the truth, and the truth will always be a reflection of thinking with God, as I was just mentioning it, as it was part of this lesson 8, thinking with God. That is really where it goes along, because thinking and making up illusions is not thinking with God. And so thinking with God just shows us the truth and nothing but the truth. It doesn't show us other illusions. It doesn't make somebody wrong and somebody right, somebody nice and somebody evil. This is not the teaching that we want anymore. We have no use anymore of a teaching that stays or keeps us in separation, that keeps us in conflict, that keeps us on the battlefield, or I used the term previously, that keeps us as part of the slaughterhouse, because the conceptual mind, the ego, will always present and activities that keep us in the slaughterhouse and not realizing who is really slaughtered and who is also the killer, the slaughter man, the slaughterer, because that is all what we are when we choose with the ego and stay in separation. Now we are choosing for the light, we are choosing for singularity, we are choosing for peace and happiness and love. We are choosing for an inside joy that cannot even be expressed with human expressions. It is a happiness within of recognizing the presence of God within ourselves, of knowing ourselves as one. That's where we are. That's where we join. That's where I say thank you for being here with me. Thank you for being with me on this seeming journey that demonstrates an undeniable success of transformative experiences as that remembrance. Okay, I'm fine with 3 days to awakening. I'm fine with 3 moments to awakening, of the awareness. Okay, here I came here into time space. I saw this is completely impossible. This is all just dream imagery projected outside. This is a slaughterhouse, right? The experience is pain and suffering and separation. And it's all about death and annihilation of the self. And it's all about the littleness of the self. And it's all about the denial of the truth. And there isn't any real solution found here. It's all looked for, sought in endless, uncountable attempts on all levels, and in every corner of the world, in every corner of the conceptual mind, as well as, of course, we were also searching for it in our mental capacities, in how we could improve our situation through education and just learning and studying the best we can about a better way. But all that makes up the conceptual self. All that is part of the conceptual self. That conceptual self is that what is the identity of the I or the me, right? And that is what doesn't really exist in truth. Every awakened mind will never forget that experience, right? So we are speaking really about something that must be kept up, but for a moment needs to be experienced and acknowledged. Okay, here I am. Here is a thought in which the ego is involved, or I have an investment and I would like this and that to happen. And but particularly these challenges now on the political level or on this pandemic idea level, that is where what is offered us. And that's not going to go away like this, okay? That is only gone and seen as gone and over when we change our mind and we only acknowledge and look for the truth and only accept and allow the truth to guide us. And that acceptance of the truth is our smile and our laughter at the insanity of these myriads of expressions of illusions. And the sad part of it is when it really goes against each other and when it really becomes hurting, if physically or mentally or emotionally, each other. We are neighbors, we are friends, we are actually a one self walking with each other home. And therefore, we do need this clear perspective where the alternative lies. And that is described in this second action, which I described as day 2. And that second action is then the recognition of our own limitations and that our conclusions within the devastation of this place, of this situation in separation, of being part of the world, of feeling the pain, how this world of separation is getting unto each and every one of us, and really coming to that clear decision and choice within our mind, within that still dream of fear and separation, that we have had enough of it, enough of that. And we admit that there is no solution within the concepts. There is no solution within the ego mind, within the conceptual human mind. We have to really go beyond those solutions of the past. A problem cannot be solved by applying only past thoughts. So there is a crucial turning point set in our transformation. And so that allowing cause and effect to unify, and that instead of keeping it constantly separate, that is really the beginning and where we take a decision at this crucial turning point, where the human consciousness finally becomes aware, okay, I'm already trapped, and I have been trapped in my mind by my own thoughts, by my own ego applications. And it's just never ending. It has been and would continue to be an endless cycle of misery and death, of feelings of loss, of feelings of deep pain and frustration and depression, of desperation for that solution. So only the decision, I do not want that anymore, I have enough of this, only this decision is a true expression of asking for help, is a true action of mind of I'm not gonna hold that as a guideline for myself to define myself or to experience myself. I will and be willing to hand it over to you, Christ, Holy Spirit. It is a letting go of that meanings of that determined objective reality. And we turn it over to the mind of God. We turn it over to a higher power if you are not a Christian. And we are turning it over to a something capitalized that is greater than ourself, and everything that we thought determines ourselves, which includes the entire world I see, right? It is a universal corrective principle. This is what Jesus talks about. It is God Himself to whom we turn over our life and our will. And it doesn't matter how we want to call it, right? It is really about the application, because there is a guarantee given. And that was the teaching of Jesus Christ throughout these 2000 years, that you will come out on the other side and you will realize and recognize who you are in truth and what your will truly is, that cannot be different than what the will of God is. And this is all how we how should I say, how we greet each other, what we offer each other, how we uh, how we accompany each other on this journey of transformation. And as I was and repeat that this third idea, the day three to the awakening, or this third action of mind, isn't really a linear outcome of the first two actions, but it is an inevitable outcome. It is literally a revelatory outcome. It is okay, here I was willing to change my mind, and out of the change of mind, I'm willing to recognize and do recognize who I am in a holy instant, in a joining and a unification of mind as realized universal mind, a present holy instant. Okay, it's no longer a reference to anything on the timeline, neither with the past nor in the future, in a better idea, but it is really a present holy instant of waking up from the dream and leaving perception of how I experienced myself, how I was seeing you, how I was seeing the world. It is a leaving of this place of despondency within our own mind. It is this leaving of the idea of death, in which we were basically suffocating. And in that leaving, which is leaving perception of limitation and littleness, there is opening up and revealing the awakening, the resurrecting light experience. And in that experience, we recognize perfectly well that there is no such thing as an I that is subject to death, that there is no such thing as death, but there is eternal life, but there is light that encompasses everyone and everything. And life without an opposite, life that is and is always only now. And so, of course, the mind that experiences this healing in its totality, because that is healing in its totality, in a true understanding, aligns himself, herself, that mind aligns itself with the divinity within, the divine within. That divine within is in each and every one of us. And that means also recognizing the oneness with each and all. And it is a recognition of the oneness of singular self. I am one self. And that oneself is created by God Himself and is still remained that oneself. So, and as that oneself, we recognize, we know the oneself, our own oneself, as being free, as being happy, as being perfectly at peace, without a necessity for a reference with the past, without a necessity for any comparison, without the need to judge or condemn or get even or react in order to defend another perspective, another position, another way. This is all illusions. Just ask for the truth. Just let the truth be revealed in you and let yourself only be guided by the truth. Do not accept anything less than that. And then mind is no longer little mind, conceptual mind, human, separate, split mind, but mind then extends itself and shares itself as what the term is spirit. Spirit, we are. Spirit, I am. And spirit is realized as thinking, the faculty of extending thought, thinking, or divine thought, thinking with Him, thinking with the Holy Spirit, thinking with Christ, thinking with God, because God is the mind with which we think. And so this is a timeless extension. This is a timeless thinking faculty that we are. And this is really the series in which we want to look and go into what those 3 days or those 3 actions offer us in details. I'm just now already for the second time really making an emphasis in this generalization of what the seeming process of awakening brings about. But it is nothing less than remembering who you are, who I am, as being created, perfect, and whole. And it is a single instant. Those 3 actions or 3 ideas of how transformation occurs in our mind is not more than this single instant in time, transforming oneself, transforming our own self, and so the world that we made and still see into eternity, into the light of God. Or we can say, as we already mentioned it, life at last, eternal presence within ourselves, coming to life, waking up from this dream of separation. This is really what this call to the unlimited is, because in this book, the call to the unlimited, that is on the market and is on Amazon, this is kind of the idea that came through guidance, through me, and I would like to share that with you. And so this idea of 3 days in the awakening has its basis of seeing that there is a call, and that call is from our higher mind, from our divine self, from God Himself. And it is a call to remember who we are, and remember what choices we want to take, what decisions we want to take, what way we want to walk on in order to have a fulfilling experience. And so this book that I will also always use as part of this teaching in that understanding of what the Course in Miracles is teaching is really a basic acknowledgement that we can use everything. And no matter if it is a scientific idea or it is a very human exchanging relationship idea, or if it is anything that we see is on the religious, cultural, or artistic level to experience or is there to be used. We can use any idea in order to relive these three actions and arrive at an awakening experience in a remembrance of who we truly are. But what we cannot do is we cannot stay on the timeline and pretend that our future would look like the same as the past or just maybe a little bit different. No, the future has nothing to do with the past and is entirely different than the past. It will simply be a divine light reflection of the present moment, and it will not be other than the here and now, this very present moment. So we cannot say anything about the future except that it has nothing to do with the past and that we want it to be a representation and a reflection of the divine light of creation that we experience and share in the here and now. So if you have any questions to this or any commentaries, please feel free to yeah to make your comments and write in the commentary whatever comes in your mind, or if, and we can always use it then for the next episode in case we are coming back. And so welcome each other again in a week or whatever time period. It is really a timeless uh, giving ourselves away, isn't it? And of course, we are teaching all the time because we are teaching only ourselves. And always remember that you're teaching all the time because you're only teaching yourself and you learn exactly what you teach yourself. So, with that, I'm just gonna leave it for today and just have here the finishing sounds of this song that we started up the road of Patrick, and say blessings and love and peace and thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you forever.